Hey free-to-play gang, welcome back to another video. This is going to be an extremely long video for good reason. Okay, so there are going to be a lot of changes. There's going to be a lot of skill changes to many different Espers. A lot of Espers are going to gain viability. A lot of Espers are going to lose viability as well. Or rather, not that many Espers. I think just a couple of Espers are going to lose a little bit of viability. But in most cases, most of the Espers around got buffed. Whereas the rest of the Espers got shifted around to become a little bit more relevant in different content, but at the end of the day, it's not really like a buff or a nerf. But anyway, let's just start immediately. So the first Esper on the skill adjustments list is going to be Cecilia, and this is a massive buff. So no change to skill 1 and skill 3, which is okay. Skill 2, this is the passive. This is an amazing buff. So take a look at this. Revives and heals all fallen allies, healing 15% of the allies' max HP, grants them 30% AP, which is less than 50%, however, there is another 20% here. So each revived allies extends this ability's cooldown by 1 turn, which is like, okay, I understand. So you can actively revive all of your allies right now. And grants all allies shield for 1 turn, shield strength equals to 50% of allies' max HP, which is the same. And then you further grant all allies 20% AP, which means that the allies that you revive will gain 50% AP, but the allies who are not dead will only gain 20% AP. Now, this ability's cooldown is not affected by any other methods, but on Ascension, if this ability is not in cooldown when Cecilia dies, it will automatically be cast. So that means that she's still going to retain its passive effect, however now she can use it as an active skill as well. But there is more than just this for her buff, and we're going to get into that in just a moment. And now, Sienna is going to be another Esper that gets incredibly buffed, especially for PvE content, and maybe even PvP as well. Actually, you know what? Yeah, she is absolutely buffed for PvP as well. So, no changes in her first 2 skills, but her third skill attacks all enemies, deals 120% attack, clears the enemy's AP. Now, upon successful clearing, you have a 100% chance of inflicting stun for 1 turn, which is a lot better than 60% chance of inflicting stun for 1 turn. And then afterwards, you gain an additional turn, and your cooldown is actually reduced to 5 turns, which is great. This is great, because after gaining an additional turn, this has an effective skill cooldown of 4 turns, which makes her very viable in PvE, but the reso changes that she's going to receive is going to be even more game-breaking, and we'll talk about that in just a bit as well. Now, moving on to Sally, her skill change is actually not the interesting thing. It's her reso change that is actually making her very broken. Now, one change to her second skill dispels all debuffs from allies, redistributes HP evenly across all allies, which is okay, grants attack up and recovery to all allies for 2 turns. Yeah, sure. Now, Gabrielle, okay, so she's going to be gearing up for Fafnir, so she's going to be very viable in Fafnir. So her first skill now hits twice, that's basically the only difference here. And her third skill hits 3 times, dude, 3 whole times. This is really strong, and the reason why this is strong, not only is it a multi-hitting skill, but there is a much better chance of inflicting the attack down this time, right? So now you have 3 opportunities to inflict your attack down, as opposed to previously where you only had 1 chance, which is really good. And obviously, she's going to have some extra reso effects as well, which we will talk about in just a bit. Now, Brewster, he's going to get a pretty sizable buff, and in fact, this is not the buff that makes him so strong in the coming update. He's going to get an insane reso update as well. So the only thing different about here that I can see is that he transfers 1 debuff to the enemy, and after that, everything else looks the same to me. Now, Clara, she has a kind of like a buff. I would say this is a buff. So previously, she would double heal onto 1 ally who had the lowest HP sometimes, right? But now she will always only heal 2 separate allies, which in my opinion is really good because you would then dispel debuffs from 2 of your allies instead of just focusing on 1. So I think this is kind of like a buff, but just a very minor one. Now Louis, okay, he has a really big buff, but it's kind of like a nerf in some cases as well. So his second skill now inflicts Seer for 2 turns. And the reason why I say this might be a nerf is you will not be able to one-shot hide anymore. You will need to use this skill. And if you land Seer, Hide is just going to revive, and then you will need to use your third skill on Hide, which is kind of sad. But this is a big change, especially for holo battles and RTA. So when killing a target, all abilities cooldown -1 turn, and then you gain invincibility for 1 turn. This is so huge. This is really, really good. But okay, so some of you guys are going to be extremely depressed, but the rest of you guys who do not have an Anesidora, you're going to be just fine. So take a look at this, right? Let's take a look at the second skill first, right? Attacks 1 enemy twice, deals damage per hit, blah blah blah. Each hit has 60% chance of dispelling 1 buff, okay? Same thing, right? Ascension instantly triggers the target's Pandora box effect and inflicts stun for 1 turn. Wait a minute. Inflict stun for 1 turn? Isn't that what the third skill, the Pandora's box does? And that's where the nerf is. Grants all allies speed up for 2 turns, inflicts Pandora's box on all enemies for 2 turns. After an enemy takes an action, HP reduces by 30% and inflicts speed down for 2 turns. Speed down for 2 turns. And this HP reduction actually decreased from 50% as well. So she will no longer stun on her box skill. That stunning effect is now on her second skill, which is like, what? It's a major nerf. Oh my god, it's such a big nerf to Anesidora. I'll probably never ever touch her again, dude. So that's the end of Anesidora and her overwhelming power. Now Sander, okay, so his third skill now no longer triple hits, which is great, it now single hits. And the reason why I think they want to affect this change is so that he becomes a little bit more viable in APEP, which I think this is a good move. So he's going to be extremely powerful for APEP this time around. So from 3 attacks to 1 single attack, and everything else seems to be the same, except they had to account for the triple hit landing extra AP reductions, but previously it has a 50% chance to land AP reductions 3 times, right? But now you have a 100% chance of reducing the enemy's AP by 60%, which I think is a better trade-off. I think mathematically this is a little bit better. And of course you inflict stun for 1 turn, so I feel like Sander's kit is definitely improved, especially for APEP. Now Dhalia is going to receive a nerf, okay? So take a look at the second skill here. Attacks one enemy 3 times. I didn't know he attacked 3 times, to be honest. I thought she always hit twice. Okay, but anyway, this is going to be a nerf, right? So she attacks 3 times, 70% chance of inflicting speed down for 2 turns, same thing. 50% chance, no longer 100% chance of inflicting freeze for 1 turn. This is a big change, because now she's not going to be that reliable to counter like Renzi for example. And on top of that, instead of having a cooldown of 2 turns, she now has a cooldown of 3 turns, which is a major change. It's a major shift. So she's going to lose 1/2 of her kit, which makes her so strong. Obviously, her third skill is the go-to factor in most cases, but her second skill is also largely the reason why she's so powerful. Now, Xiao, this is a very interesting change, and this is a change. It is not a nerf, it's not a buff, in my opinion, right? So now he gains speed up on his first skill, and he applies speed down on his second skill. And on top of that, dealing damage steals 10% of the target's AP as well. But take a look at his third skill here, attacks enemies 4 times. Each hit has a 50% chance of inflicting minus 20% AP. So he no longer scales his damage according to the debuffs on the enemies. He now absorbs AP, which makes him really good for Chronos, I think. So I feel like the way that they are shifting Xiao is to become more of a Chronos farmer. So I think most players will be using Xiao for just, AP controlling Chronos, because Chronos has a lot of AP movement on his kit right now. Next we have Lynn, so they're gonna change her a little bit, just a little bit. So for her third skill, now she double attacks, which makes her a little bit more viable in Fafnir, especially since she's a wind type. And she also gives herself like 15% extra AP, which is like, okay. Whatever, man. But I think she's gonna be quite decent for Fafnir. I mean, she has always been decent for Fafnir, it's just that now she's a little bit better. And now Alexa, okay, so I didn't see this coming at all. She's going to get a major shift in her kit, and her kit is going to be geared towards APEP. Take a look at this, okay? Take a look at her second skill here. Redistributes HP evenly among all allies, which is the same. Heals allies that are affected by Kiss or Nightingale by 20%, which is the same as well. But the Ascension effect here dispels 1 debuff from all allies. Successfully dispelling at least 1 debuff will heal all allies as well, and healing 20% of the target's max HP. So this skill is going to be really good for APEP, especially since APEP is going to land a lot more poison stacks this time around. And Alexa is here to dispel those debuffs, and that's why she's going to be the Fusion Esper as well. They are planning to use her for APEP when the ritual update comes around. And then here, grants Kiss or Nightingale to 1 ally. When this ally takes a hit, reflects 75% damage, it's the same thing, right? But dispels 1 debuff from this ally at the beginning of their turn. So this Kiss or Nightingale also dispels debuffs, which makes her really, really good, really strong for APEP. And now Meredith as well, so she's going to be a Fafnir healer, right? Yeah. So her first skill attacks 3 whole times. Yep, this is the part. And she dispels buffs as well, which is the removal of the Envari Shut effect on the boss. So she's going to be quite useful, I think. Now, there's not much change for her third skill, I think, but the biggest change for Meredith is her leader buff here. She gains a speed leader buff. Take a look at this. Increases all ally speed in Ritual Miracles, Sonic Miracles, Desolate Land, Sentinel Hunt by 25%. Dude, she's going to be so good for Fafnir. She's going to replace the role that Sander filled in the past, because now Sander is definitely going to miss like crazy, right? And that's where she comes in. So Meredith is actually going to be quite useful. So I'm quite glad that she is currently the Ripple Dimension Esper right now. Next we have Djoser, and dude, I suspected this so much, dude. I knew they were going to do something to Djoser. So they have completely shifted his kit entirely, so he's no longer going to apply defense down. He is now going to dispel 1 debuff from the caster, which is kind of weird. But the thing is, take a look at his second and third skills, right? While Bull Rage is active, attacks will inflict disease for 2 turns. He is meant for APEP right now. And on Ascension, gains 1 stack of Bull Rage per attack. So now he gains that Bull Rage stacks whenever he attacks, instead of when he receives damage. And his third skill gains 5 stacks of Bull Rage instantly and attacks 1 enemy and inflicts defense down. So he's perfect for APEP, right? Perfect, perfect. He single hits all the way. Now, this is the change to Bull Rage. So you gain basic defense plus 10% and resist plus 5% per stack, which I think is the same, right? It's probably the same as the past. Yeah, it is exactly the same over here. But when inflicted with a non-incapacitation debuff, which is like just a normal debuff like poisons, 50% chance of consuming 1 Bull Rage stack to resist this debuff with a maximum of 5 stacks. Dude, he is debuff immune. But this 50% actually goes up to 100% on his Rezo, which we will take a look at later on. Now, Laura is going to get a little bit of a buff as well, so she's just going to have more shields. Like, the shield strength is just going to be a little bit stronger, which is really, really nice. And she has like an increased 50% chance to counter attack, which is like, okay, who gives a shit? And do take note that right now her third skill, right, instead of 25% of the allies' max HP, it's 20% of her own max HP, which I think is a well-needed change. So now she's like on par with Berenice. And okay, so there are a lot of stats adjustments here, but I think the main field that I want to focus on is, let's say, height, right? So he's going to get a little bit more attack. He's going to lose quite a significant amount of HP, which is quite sad. This is actually a strong nerf to Height's kit. He's going to gain more defense, but I feel like that HP is more important than defense, especially since we're talking about PvP. I feel like in PvP, HP is quite much better than defense. Yeah, my English is terrible. So Tang Xuan, before, his damage is actually going to increase by quite a significant amount. He's going to be less geared towards his tankiness, so his HP is going to drop a little bit, defense is going to drop a little bit, but most importantly is his attack that is going to go up. And the reason for that is in his resonance, which we will take a look at that later on as well. So spoiler alert, Tang Xuan is probably going to be quite meta moving forward. He's one of those few Espers who's going to get a major shift. But in terms of the rest of the stats, I'm not too bothered at all. Honestly, the speed changes here, they are not too game breaking because nothing is like bypassing 106, except Tricky of course, but his change is not in his speed. And then there are captain ability adjustments here. So Djoser now has resist, which is pretty decent for APEP. Meredith has a speed up, like I said. Now Falcon increases ally speed by 20%, which can be quite good in a point war, especially if you're going to be using like a tanky setup. You might want to use Falcon for, I don't know, increasing the speed of your team so that you can like land some debuffs and all that. His resonance also has some improvements as well. And then Xiao has increased attack in Ritual Miracles, which is pretty good. So he's no longer going to be considered a PvP Esper. He is now purely kind of like a PvE based Esper, which I really like. Because back then when he was a PvP Esper, he was not even that common, to be honest. Kind of a waste. Alright, and that's about it for the Esper balance changes in their skill adjustments, dude. This is really quite interesting. So there are a lot of Espers who have definitely risen the ranks. There are a lot of Espers who have dropped as well. But for the most part, Espers are generally buffed, which I really like to see. So let me know your comments down below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Anyway, this has been Dari Free to Play, and as always, I will see you in the next video.